All right, you've seen the pictures, right? You look at this incredible art from ancient Egypt, and there's one question that always pops up. Why on earth are so many of their gods drawn with human bodies but animal heads? I mean, it's a question everybody asks, from tourists staring up at the pyramids to kids on a field trip. Well, here's the thing. It's not just some strange artistic choice. It's actually a code, and today we're going to crack it. So, what's the deal? Was this just, a cool style choice? Some artist's creative flair? Nope, not even close. This way of drawing isn't just quirky, it's a direct window into the entire worldview, the belief system, the daily life, basically, this soul of one of the most fascinating civilizations ever. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll tackle that big question. Then we'll get inside their heads to understand why they'd worship animals in the first place. We'll look at the three big reasons, meet some of the A-list gods, and then we'll get to a huge contradiction that might just blow your mind. All right, first things first, to really get this, you have to understand one absolutely crucial thing about ancient Egypt. Religion wasn't just important, it was everything. I mean, it wasn't just something they did on the weekend. It was the entire operating system for their society, their jobs, their view of the universe. Every single thing they did had a divine reason behind it. And I'm not exaggerating when I say everything. We think of the Greek or Roman gods, and there's a dozen or so main ones. Well, the ancient Egyptians, get this. At its peak, their pantheon had over 2,800 different gods. This wasn't just a belief system. It was a massive, sprawling universe of gods woven into every single corner of their lives. Now, to be fair, Egypt wasn't the only place doing this. Worshipping animals was a thing all over the ancient world. You've got dragons in Japan and China, sacred cows in India. Lots of cultures saw something divine in animals. But the Egyptians took it to a whole other level. They built a system around it that was just incredibly unique and sophisticated. So you might be wondering, how did they decide? With thousands of animals around them, how did they pick which ones to turn into gods? Well, it wasn't random at all. Their choices were super deliberate, and they were all based on three really powerful and very human motivations. Yeah, it basically boils down to a rule of three. First up, benefit. If an animal gave you something useful, you worshipped it. Think about the cow, goddess Hathor, giving milk, meat, leather. Super beneficial. Second, power. They respected animals that were just awesome, like the falcon, god Horus, the ultimate hunter in the sky. You see that kind of power, you revere it. And third, fear. If an animal terrified you, you deified it. The crocodile, god Sobek, is the perfect example. Worshipping it was a way to hopefully, not get eaten by it. Okay, so we've got our code, right? Benefit, power, and fear. Let's put it into practice and meet some of the most famous gods in the gallery to see how it all clicks together. And we have to start with maybe the most iconic one of all, Anubis, the solemn guardian of the dead, the master of the afterlife. So, why a jackal? Well, think about it. Jackals were scavengers, and you'd often see them hanging around cemeteries. So in this kind of brilliant flip, the Egyptians turned the animal that loiters around tombs into the ultimate protector of those tombs. Anubis wasn't just a symbol, he was the master embalmer, the one who knew the secrets of mummification. And most important of all, he was the one who oversaw the weighing of the heart, that critical moment that decided where your soul would spend eternity. Okay, so from the great protector of the dead, let's turn to the embodiment of pure, raw power, Horus. You almost always see Horus with the head of a falcon, and there's a really good reason for that. A falcon is fast, it's a powerful hunter, and its eyesight is legendary. The Egyptians looked at those skills and basically said, yep, those are the qualities of a king. So Horus became the god of kingship, of the sky, of divine power. His name literally translates to the crusher. How cool is that? A direct nod to that bird's lethal power. And now for that third pillar we talked about, fear. And believe me, there was pretty much nothing in the Nile more terrifying than the crocodile. So of course, the Egyptians created the formidable god Sobek. Worshipping Sobek was just practical. It was self-preservation. By honoring this god, they were basically hoping to get on his good side and not become lunch. And this reverence went to some wild extremes. Get this, in his temples, they would raise actual live crocodiles. They'd feed them, pamper them, deck them out in jewels, treating them as living, breathing versions of the god himself. But what happens when a god has a complex personality? Sometimes one animal just isn't enough, and that's where you get the incredible story of Bastet and Sekhmet. They were seen as two sides of the very same goddess. On one hand, you have Bastet, the gentle house cat, representing home, family, and protection. But when she got angry, she transformed into Sekhmet, the lioness, a fierce goddess of war, disease, and pure destruction. As you can imagine, this whole belief gave cats an incredibly high status. I mean, hurting a cat wasn't just frowned upon, it was a major crime. And this is how seriously they took it. When a family's cat died, the owners would shave off their eyebrows as a public sign of mourning. That's how much they revered these little furry vessels of the divine. So, the picture seems pretty straightforward, right? They picked animals for their awesome traits, made them gods, and treated them with total reverence. Case closed. But that's not the whole story, because their relationship with these sacred animals had a much darker and honestly a much stranger side. Things are about to take a really sharp turn. So, the big question is, were these animals sacred and protected above all else? I mean, given everything we've just talked about, you'd think the answer is a simple, obvious yes. They were sacred, they were protected, they were totally untouchable. Right? Wrong. They were killed by the millions. In one of the biggest paradoxes in all of history, these same sacred animals were being bred, killed, and mummified on an industrial scale. Now, this sounds like total hypocrisy, but to them, it wasn't. It was a completely different and very profound form of worship. You see, they would raise huge populations of these animals, cats for Bastet, ibis birds for Thoth, crocodiles for Sobek, for the specific purpose of being sacrificed. They'd then be mummified and offered at temples. It was like sending a physical prayer, a living messenger, straight to your god to ask for a favor or to say thank you. And that brings us right back to where we started. Why the animal heads? It wasn't just a weird quirk. It was a brilliant and super efficient way to communicate, a visual shorthand, if you will. By sticking the head of an animal on a human body, an artist could instantly tell you everything you needed to know about that god's power and personality. The jackal's guardianship, the falcon's royal power, the crocodile's raw fear. Archaeologists have found huge catacombs just packed to the ceiling with these mummified animal offerings. But here's the crazy part. They think what we've found so far is just the tip of the iceberg. The number of animal mummies still buried out there beneath the sands of Egypt is estimated to be in the millions. So the next time you see one of those incredible drawings, you won't just see a strange piece of art. You'll see a sophisticated language of power, fear, and faith. And it leaves us with one last huge question. With millions of these sacred messengers still waiting to be discovered, what other secrets about how the Egyptians saw the world are still buried out there, right under the sand?